Story 1. My Former Wife's Grave.
This all started because I offered my wife's tombstone a tuna sandwich. That probably sounds insane, so here's the backstory. For our first date, Emma and I had a picnic on the beach. I'd asked if she liked tuna. She said sure, so I made sandwiches. We picnicked a lot during our first year together, and tuna was on the menu 50% of the time. For our first anniversary, we went to that beach spot again. But as I handed Emma her sandwich, she said, "I've got to tell you something. Tuna, it's repulsive. I'd literally rather eat it after it's gone through my digestive system. No offense." She'd assumed she'd like the taste before our date, but the second she took that first bite, she wanted to bleach her tongue. The problem is, when she saw all the love and care I'd put into the crusts and dill pickles, she felt too guilty to spit it out. I just laughed, and for all future picnics, I always jokingly offered her the first bite of my tuna sandwich. Last year, Emma died on Valentine's Day. She was speeding home from work because I'd cooked a romantic dinner. For 3 months, I barely climbed out of bed, except to shit and eat, until one sunny afternoon, when I randomly packed a picnic basket and jumped in the car. Her grave sits at the top of a grassy knoll in the shade of an elm tree. There, I laid out a red blanket and food. Without thinking, I offered her headstone a bite of my tuna sandwich, and once I realized what I'd done, I laughed for the first time since the accident. So anytime the weather was decent, I went back. These picnic dates really brightened my mood, and before long I got on a first-name basis with Harry the groundskeeper. In August, as I unfurled the blanket, a gust of wind ripped it from my hands and swooped it across the face of a lady standing down the hill. I raced over as she clumsily tried freeing herself, then wrestled the blanket back. The woman underneath had real Disney princess energy, all blue eyes and curly black hair. Her name was Ruth. She was visiting her late husband, Christian Merry, whose name stuck in my head because my first thought was, Merry Christmas. From then on, when I visited Emma's grave, sometimes I spotted Ruth at that same spot. We occasionally gave each other friendly waves. Then, one afternoon, she strolled along the path as I started packing up. "Walk you to the gate?" she asked. "Sure." On the way past, she touched Emma's gravestone once and smiled at me. "So what's with the sandwiches? Sometimes I see you and it's like you showing off what you ate to the tombstone." When I explained the meaning behind the ritual, she said, "That's so sweet. Christian loved tuna too." She faced me dead on, locked her eyes on mine and said, "Do you ever think grief is heavenly?" Sure. Down the hill there was a nasty gust of wind, and Ruth did a pretend dive for cover as if another blanket might attack. I burst out laughing. Then I asked her to coffee. That night, the barbs of grief stung real bad. What sort of bastard asks for another woman's number within earshot of his wife's grave? My friends promised I hadn't broken any rules, and even Harry encouraged me to put myself out there. "That pretty lady's been around here for years. You two would be good together." And so, over a series of coffee dates, I poured my grief into Ruth. "I feel exactly the same," she said. "I thought I was broken too when I lost, Christian." She rarely talked about her late husband, and when she did, she kept the details vague. Some pain is just too raw to share, I figured. The first night we spent together happened by accident, a dinner date that ran long. In the morning, after I kissed her goodbye, I threw my back against the door and slid to the ground, sobbing. Casual coffees were one thing, but this had morphed into a full-blown affair. I was terrified of visiting Emma's grave again in case she rose from the dead to kick my ass. Earlier this year, Ruth had problems with her asshole landlord, so I suggested she stay with me, temporarily, and for a few months, I left the past in the rearview mirror. We even went on a few picnics, although I never made Ruth a tuna sandwich. Things changed when she asked how we should celebrate Valentine's Day. The first anniversary of Emma's accident. Let me tell you, that guilt swung back hard. The dirt around Emma's headstone was still fresh. What sort of husband jumped into another relationship so fast? In the end, I decided I needed to move on sooner or later, so I made a plan. Visit Emma on Valentine's Day morning, then spend the afternoon with Ruth. I just needed to break the news ahead of time, rather than on her death anniversary. So, I pulled out all the stops for a killer picnic, despite the crappy weather. On the grassy knoll, I'd barely finished unscrewing the coffee flask when the tears came. I confessed all about my new relationship, about how I'd never meant to move on so fast, and how deeply, deeply sorry I was. Emma's grave took the news surprisingly well.
In all seriousness, deep in my gut, I knew she would have wanted me to find happiness. The only thing left to do was finish a quick side quest. Visit Christian Mary's grave. He deserved to know the new guy in Ruth's life thought the world of her. Past the tree, I checked the headstone she usually stood over. A married couple were buried there, the Presleys. I marched around, going in circles, widening my search every time. No Christian. At the groundskeeper's shack, I asked Harry about his grave. Harry consulted the notes and then walked me past the hill through an alley of trees. Christian's resting place was further along I'd ever seen Ruth hang out. Weird, but not as weird as what I found next. According to the inscription, he died on the 6th of October, 2 months after my blanket blew onto Ruth's face, which would have meant she'd hung around the grave before he died. At dinner, I casually asked her, "Hey, so, I know this isn't an easy topic, but where's Christian buried?" She froze, a forkful of casserole halfway to her mouth. "Why?" "Well, Valentine's Day is the anniversary of Emma's accident, so I was going to pop by. I thought maybe I'd pay my respects to Christian too." Keeping my voice casual, I added, "He's on the far side of the tree, right? Just down the hill." "He's further down." "But then what?" I didn't like getting too close. Standing over his grave made me sick, okay? "I understand." I waited a second. "By the way, when did he pass? March? April? Why are you interrogating me? Don't you realize how hard this is for me?" With that, she carried her plate and glass into the kitchen. After Ruth went to bed, I Googled Christian Mary and combed through an article about a freak sailing accident. The body of Mr. Merry, 34, was recovered from the water near a jetty off the coast. Ruth Merry said her husband fell into the water while on deck to check a fishing line. The date, August 6th, 2 months after our cute meeting. Something didn't add up. But over the next few days, any time I broached the subject with Ruth, the waterworks started straight away, and then she'd ask me to hold her while she cried, or accuse me of interrogating her. How was I supposed to get answers? Ruth still visited the graveyard, so the next time she set off, I tailed her disguised in a trench coat and sunglasses. I expected her to make for the hill, but instead she went around the valley and past a lake. In a completely different section, she sat alone on a wooden bench. I felt like a rotten turd. Maybe visiting the actual grave was too painful for her. As I turned to leave, a man with a scraggly beard sat beside her for a chat. Now and then, they touched each other's arms or threw their heads back laughing. Obviously, they knew each other well. After 20 minutes, they both stood, and then they shared a weird, awkward kiss. Unplanned, judging by how neither of them knew what to do with their hands afterwards. Part of me wanted to run up for a big, dramatic bust-up, but there was too much racing through my mind. I bolted out of there instead. What did this mean? Did she lose interest in me? Was that why she never talked about Christian? Because this other guy was a better listener? As strange as this sounds, a massive sense of relief washed over me. It felt like I deserved to be cheated on for betraying Emma. Back home, Ruth came through the door and kissed me as if her graveyard romance never happened. In the end, I decided the affair needed to wait. Valentine's Day had almost arrived, which meant I had enough problems to deal with. Hell, maybe explaining the situation to Emma would help me straighten the mess out. On the morning of the big day, I wrapped 2 tuna sandwiches and slipped them into a basket, along with a thermos of coffee and some iced buns. I got halfway out the door when Ruth asked me to go upstairs. She said there was a giant spider in the tub. The bathroom was pest-free. Must have scurried off, she said as I came back down. Then she smiled and handed me my keys. At the graveyard, my heart cracked in half before I even laid out the blanket. I confessed everything to Emma, how I'd met another woman, how that other woman met another man, and that the whole mess felt like a punishment for moving on too soon. Unloading my problems made me feel 50 pounds lighter. I wiped away the tears and finished laying out the picnic. Then, like always, I offered Emma's headstone the first bite of a tuna sandwich. Since she wasn't hungry, I helped myself. But that first bite seemed off. Not in taste, just wrong. My chest tightened. I reminded myself how to breathe. I went to wipe away sweat, but my arms grew heavy. I grabbed the thermos and by now my hand was trembling. It's like I could only suck oxygen through a straw. I thumped my chest, gasped for air, and finally spat bread all over Emma's grave. Part of me screamed, "You're dying." Logically, but a louder part screamed, "You just disgraced your wife's grave, you prick." I remember rolling onto my back and seeing her standing there. Ruth. I clawed at the air above my chest, pleading for help, and when that didn't work, I gestured at my throat. Then I noticed the remains of my sandwich in her hand. Without warning, she straddled me and forced more tuna into my mouth. The taste of mayo and pickle made me gag even harder. I needed to stop her. I bit down on her fingers until she ripped her hand away. She didn't scream or yelp or cry out, just narrowed her eyes at me. Next thing I knew, she clamped my nostrils shut. In her free hand, she had a clump of tuna, poised and ready for the second my mouth opened. "You're not the first, you know," she sneered, "but you were the sweetest." The tuna thing, that really touched me. Most men can't love dead women like you do. Dead woman? I craned my neck back and looked straight up. Emma's grave was only a few feet above my skull. I bucked my hips. Ruth flew forward, slamming her forehead straight into Emma's tombstone with a dull thud. A trail of blood trickled down right above the point where it said "beloved wife." Then Ruth rolled onto her side, groaning. My body wouldn't quit shaking. I felt like I was drowning as I rolled down the hill. Then I crawled right through a funeral procession. A group of mourners, each dressed in black, screamed in alarm. A priest threatened to have me arrested until he saw the shade of blue my face had turned. The ambulance ride was a blur. My first clear memory, waking up with an IV. The nurses said the first thing I asked was if they thought Emma might ever forgive me. A blood test revealed that my tuna sandwich had been laced with fentanyl. Inside the picnic basket, they found an envelope addressed to Emma in my handwriting. In it, I confessed how no woman could ever replace her, so I was committing suicide via poisoned picnic to honor her memory. The man Ruth met on the bench, Gavin, said she told him her most recent boyfriend committed suicide, and she went there to visit my resting place. Said they bonded over their mutual grief. Ruth is denying all of this, obviously. Says I'm nuts. So far as I can tell, she's some kind of black widow who has a fetish for bereaved husbands. The police are still trying to make sense of this mess. The second I got out of hospital, I visited Emma's grave, only to discover somebody had left a tuna sandwich beneath the headstone. I think I'm done with romance for a while. Story 2. My girlfriend and my ex's kid. I was backing my car up my driveway after a long day of work, eager to get out of my uniform and onto the couch, when I first saw him. There was a little kid, a boy, standing on my porch. Oddly, my first reaction was fear, though I couldn't tell you why. But I could feel my heart speed up as soon as I saw his face pop up in my rear-view mirror. He was dressed in denim shorts and a red t-shirt, and a backpack was slung over his shoulders. His face was pale, and he had light brown hair peeking out from underneath a blue baseball cap. His eyes locked onto mine in the reflection as I put the car in park and pulled the keys out of the ignition. I broke off the unsettling eye contact to glance up and down the street. What if this is a robbery? I thought wildly. That's a thing, isn't it? Children used as decoys to get your guard down? I shook my head a little, realizing how ridiculous I sounded. Jesus, I need to lay off the late-night true crime rabbit holes. The street was empty, except a tabby cat wandering idly by the storm drain. I glanced back toward the boy as I gathered my duffel bag and laptop case from the back seat. Then it dawned on me, and I laughed at myself. Once every few weeks or so, I'd get neighborhood kids knocking on my door, asking to retrieve a frisbee or football or whatever else out of my backyard. My fence shared a side with 2 other yards, both of which housed apparently very social and rambunctious children. Chuckling, I shut the car door a little too hard, sending the cat scurrying off down the street. I waved at the boy. "So what is it this time? Soccer ball?" I asked him, as I stepped up onto the porch. He cocked his head slightly. "Ball? Yeah, did you all throw something over the fence again? If you give me a minute to set my stuff down, I'll grab it for you." That's when I realized something. I couldn't hear any kids playing behind the house, besides a sprinkler across the street and a police car siren going off in the distance. It was quiet. I could feel myself getting a little nervous again, this time worried that this kid was lost or in some sort of trouble. I squatted down, concerned. "Hey, what's your name?" "Matt." Something about him seemed familiar, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it yet. "All right, Matt, you okay? Where's your parents?" He shuffled his feet. "She brought me here." "Your mom, you mean? She dropped you off? Here? Like on my porch? Why—" Then an idea hit me. The reason he looked familiar. I tried to smile at him. "Is your mom's name Jennifer? Jenny?" He nodded. I sighed, probably failing to hide how frustrated this whole situation was making me. Jenny was my ex. We didn't date very long. I'm the one who called it off. She'd been great at first, but it soon became apparent she had a serious drug problem. I couldn't deal with the mood swings or the constant stealing and lying, so after a last-ditch effort to get her to get help, which she staunchly refused, I broke it off. Damn, maybe this is a robbery after all, I thought darkly. Part of me still felt bad about dumping someone that was obviously in a bad place, but honestly, I just wasn't equipped to handle that sort of thing. I was also not equipped to handle kids, and looking at Matt, I realized this was the longest conversation I'd had with someone other than an adult in years. I found out Jenny had a kid, or perhaps multiple, pretty early on in our relationship, but I never met them. They didn't live with Jenny, and it was obviously a bit of a sore topic for her. When I asked, she told me that the dad was an asshole that refused to let her see them, and that was the first and last time it was brought up. Of course, later I'd realized the real reasons behind her lack of custody, but at the time I didn't want to upset her, so I didn't pry into it further. And here I was, still unable to shake her out of my life. This was really putting a damper on my plans of doing absolutely nothing on a rare stretch of off days. I unlocked the door and walked into the house, setting my bags down inside. "You can put yours down with mine here." No reply. I turned back and saw Matt had not followed me in yet. He stood right outside the doorway, head tilted, eyes on me. "Hey, come on inside. It's getting dark out here and the porch light is busted." I shepherded the boy into my living room and onto the couch. I sat across from him in an armchair. After a couple minutes of awkward silence, I asked him why Jenny had dropped him at my doorstep. There was no one else. None close enough. Matt hadn't yet blinked. His eyes were wide and dark. They reminded me of a shark, or some other cold-blooded animal. I rubbed my eyes wearily and groaned. That didn't surprise me. The only bridges Jenny hadn't burned were shady characters that had no business taking care of a kid. Not that I had any idea how to, either, but at least she didn't have to worry about Matt stepping on a dirty needle or seeing God knows what at a wild house party. And Marlene, Jenny's mother, God, I did not want to have to deal with her again, but I figured she would be my best bet to pass along the kid. She lived about 4 hours away, likely why he hadn't been dropped in her care to begin with, but I would be more than happy to make the drive. I just needed to call her to get the address. I glanced at my phone, nearly 9 o'clock. I looked over at the boy. He'd been staring at me blankly the whole time. I'm not a fan of kids, to be honest. I don't hate them, I'm just never around them much. But this kid gave me the creeps. I wondered why she had to leave him behind so quickly, and why he was with her in the first place. I hoped she had checked herself into rehab, getting help before she could talk herself out of it again, and not something nefarious. Do you, want some food? Matt shook his head. Not hungry? Okay. Are you tired? It's getting kinda late. When's your bedtime? He shrugged. This is like pulling teeth. Come on, Patrick, get it together. You're the adult here. I pulled out some spare sheets and an extra pillow, turning the couch into a makeshift bed. I opened the backpack and found a couple changes of clothes and some toiletries. I handed Matt a pair of PJs and a toothbrush and guided him to the bathroom. Once he shut the door, I wandered into my own bedroom and pulled out my phone. I tried calling Jenny first. The number you are trying to call is no longer in service. I wasn't that surprised. Her not paying her phone bill or losing her phone had always been a point of tension while we were together. I sighed. Steeling myself, I dialed Marlene's number. After a few rings, it put me through to voicemail. I left a quick one, stammering out a couple sentences explaining what was going on and to call me back ASAP, then hung up. Should I call the police? I didn't want to get Jenny in trouble, not if she was trying to turn things around. Besides, I had no idea where she was currently since she moved to a new apartment after the breakup. I walked out into the living room and was surprised to see Matt already fast asleep on the couch. It hit me just how exhausted I was. It had been an insane week at work, and I'd put in a nearly 11-hour shift. Yawning, I decided that I'd be able to deal with everything better after getting some rest. I double-checked all the locks and then got into bed, leaving my door open a crack in case anything happened, and Matt needed me. I passed out almost immediately. Daddy, Daddy. My eyes shot open. The soft glow of the alarm clock illuminated a pair of eyes inches from my own. Shit! I scrambled upright. Jesus, Matt, you scared me. I'm sorry. I frowned. I'm not your dad. The eyes stared, unblinking. Oh. I could barely make out his outline in the dark. Are you okay? I asked. There's a monster trying to get in. Monsters aren't real. You probably had a bad dream. Like I said, I'm not great with kids. Go back to bed, okay? Can I sleep in here with you? No, I don't think that's I can sleep on the floor. I didn't like the thought of that, but I was too tired to argue. Okay, sure, I guess. Up until that point, Matt hadn't been very emotive. He hadn't laughed, or smiled, or cried. But when I said that, he grinned wide, and something about it made my stomach flip. Maybe it was the way the green light bounced off of his teeth, evoking the image of a Cheshire cat, or maybe a wolf. I stayed frozen as he disappeared beneath the side of my bed. I couldn't see him, but I could hear his soft breathing, and every once in a while he'd make this odd clicking sound, the way one might against the roof of your mouth with your tongue. It took me a long time to fall back asleep, and when I did, it was fitful. I woke to knocking on the front door. The clock read 11 o'clock. I must have slept straight through my alarm. Sunlight streamed in through the cracks in the blinds, making me squint. I peeked over the edge of the bed, half hoping last night was just a weird dream, but the crumpled blanket and pillow were still laying on the floor. Matt, however, was not. I hastily pulled on some jeans and made my way to the front door. The boy was in the living room, staring blankly at the TV. It was off. Morning, I said, a little nervously. Here, let me help. I switched the TV on. A solemn-looking news anchor stood above a running banner reading, Suicide Epidemic has experts. I quickly flipped through channels before landing on something more child-friendly. The knocking got louder. Okay, I'm coming. I jogged to the door and cracked it open. Were you still sleeping? It's almost noon. What, did you forget your hot, awesome girlfriend was coming over? She winked playfully, smiling. I blinked, still groggy. Yeah, I had. With the long workday yesterday and all the strangeness of last night's events, I had totally forgotten about our plans. Sheepishly I grinned. I'm sorry it's been a long night. Her eyes wandered over my shoulder, and her smile faltered slightly. Who's that? It's kind of a long story. Come on in, I'll make you some coffee. A few minutes later, I had gotten her up to speed. She did not look pleased. How long is he going to be staying here? Not long, I answered quickly. I mean, shouldn't be. I led her into the living room. Matt looked at us out of the corner of his eye but didn't say anything. I cleared my throat. Matt, this is my friend, Claire, she interrupted, finishing my sentence. Nice to meet you, Matt. She wasn't very convincing. Maybe she thinks he's secretly my kid. She turned back to me. So, now's not a good time? No, I sputtered. No, it's fine. Stay. I smiled weakly at her. It's just for a few days, if that. I promise. I felt claustrophobic suddenly. Hey, I could do with some fresh air. Get out of the house for a bit. Claire looked a little uncomfortable, glancing over at Matt. I don't know. Maybe we should stay in. We can grab a bite to eat. Make a date out of it. My treat. About an hour later, we were all seated on the outdoor patio of a little cafe downtown. I had brought some paper and markers along, hoping to keep the kid entertained while we waited. A waiter brought a pitcher of water and a couple cups to our table. Hey, we'll actually need one more. I gestured towards Matt. I was half worried he'd ask us to put the markers away. The tablecloth was white, but the waiter didn't even look at the boy, just apologized. I'll bring another right away. Are you ready to order? I nodded. I'll have the burger, medium well, side of fries. He scribbled away at his pen pad. Anything else? Yeah, a chicken tenders basket with, how about the fruit cup? And, I paused for Claire to order, but the waiter just kept looking at me expectantly. Claire cleared her throat and pointed down at my menu. And a chicken Caesar salad, please. Thanks. I relayed her order to the waiter. He nodded and wrote the rest of it down. Hungry, huh? I'll have the extra glass out in just a sec. He walked off and I poured some water for Matt and Claire, figuring it would be the chivalrous thing to do to wait on the third myself. As I was sliding the last one over to Matt, who was now fully absorbed in his drawing, a snippet of conversation caught my attention. Worried about her, you know. She called me up the other day to tell me her daughter was visiting, asked if I wanted to make the drive up to see them, but my aunt died nearly a decade ago. I looked over, out of the corner of my eye, not wanting to seem nosy. 2 young women were sitting at the table across from us. One was nodding sympathetically, hand over the other's. Mine had memory issues, dementia, I guess, towards the end too. It might be time to consider. Pat, are you with us? Claire interrupted my eavesdropping. I was asking you how work has been lately. Embarrassed, I turned my attention to her. I vented about my job for a bit and apologized again for forgetting about our date, which she laughed off. It's okay, Pat, don't worry about it. We've been together for, well, a year next week. Time's gone by so fast. I know it's not as Her voice trailed off. I noticed the girls at the other table were now trying to steal glances at us, whispering among themselves nervously. I followed Claire's gaze to Matt. I had almost forgotten he was there. He hadn't said a peep the entire time. He had the red marker in his hands and was putting some finishing touches on his drawing. I craned my neck to get a better view. He had drawn what looked like a crow, its eyes scratched out with little X's. The neck flopped to the side at an awkward angle. He was dotting its head with the red ink, which I assumed was meant to be blood. Hey, what you drawing there? I kept my voice light. He didn't answer, just smirked slightly and kept working. He was holding his left hand rigidly under the table, something that I normally wouldn't notice except his eyes would dart down to his lap every couple of seconds. Claire and I exchanged a worried glance. Matt, I said softly, what do you have under there? He slowly raised his hand so we could see what he held. When I gasped, he dropped it quickly onto the table. It was a crow, its head twisted sharply to the side. A fleck of red smeared off onto the light tablecloth. I found it. That grin again. It looked so unnatural on the face of a child. All right, I'm so sorry about the wait, sir. It's been a busy. A glass clanged against the patio. Of course, the waiter picked the absolute worst time to return. He stared at the dead bird, then up at me. I apologized profusely, handing him my card and a hefty cash tip before asking to get everything to go. He complied, quickly this time, and I grabbed the bags in one hand and Matt with the other, quickly crumpling the drawing and shoving it deep into my pockets before ushering the boy and a mortified Claire into the car. Once the three of us were back home, I asked Claire to keep an eye on Matt and excused myself to try and call Jenny again. I turned on the TV in my bedroom on low to keep my voice from carrying into the living room. The number you are trying to call is no longer in service. I dialed Marlene once more and was robotically informed her voicemail was full. I slammed my phone down onto the bed. Fuck! This was not the relaxing time off I had hoped for. Of all the kids in the world, of course I get stuck with the poster boy for the next horror blockbuster. Another strange case in which the would-be perpetrator tried to turn themselves in for, ultimately, a crime that police say never actually took place. The woman, whose name cannot be released at this time, said the boy, claimed to be her nephew, whom she hadn't. I swiveled towards the TV, straining to make out the muffled words. After conducting an extensive search, it was determined that the teenager she claimed she killed most likely never existed in the first place. Neighbors report no. The signal cut out for a moment. I heard a clap of thunder in the distance. Claimed self-defense, stating that the intruders exhibiting odd behavior posed an active threat to their lives. However, when they tried to show law enforcement the crime scene, the bodies seem, apparently, to vanish into thin. What the hell? I ran my hands wildly around the bed to find the remote, knocking it off in the process. Once I retrieved it, I turned up the volume a notch or two, hoping the closed door would still muffle it enough. Follows on the heels of two other similar cases this week alone, though in the first we covered, a family member did report seeing the supposed female. However, their testimony has been called into question by, "I know you're not my dad." I jumped. Matt had the door slightly open and was staring at me through the crack. I hastily turned off the TV. What? And why the hell would she do that? She was upset about the breakup, yeah, but not that upset. She stared at me as I talked, arms crossed. I tried softening my tone. I mean, he's just visiting. It's not against the law to have a friend's, acquaintance's kid at your house. I want him gone. Soon. For a brief moment, an odd look passed over her face. It didn't look like the sweet woman I'd been dating. I was taken aback. But then, it was back to normal, so fast I wasn't sure I had seen it at all. That's not really your call, is it? It's my house. It came out harsher than I intended. She was out of line, but I wasn't trying to start a fight. I knew the kid was making her uncomfortable just like me. She laid down and adjusted her pillow slightly, and I saw something glint beneath it, reflecting the light from the lamp. "Claire, what did you put under there?" When she didn't answer right away, I pulled up the side of the pillow to see for myself. "What the hell, Claire? A knife?" She stared at me, face unreadable. "It's just a precaution. Like I said, he scared me earlier. I don't trust him." "This is insane. He's a little kid, Claire." I was pissed, but half of the anger was coming from a little voice in my mind saying she might be right. I pushed the thought away. "Just leave if you're that freaked out." She huffed and turned angrily to her side, facing away from me. I sighed and turned off the lamp, the cold pit in my stomach growing bigger. For once, the dark made me uneasy instead of relaxed. Needing a distraction, I rummaged around my nightstand for my earbuds, popping one in and turning my phone's brightness all the way down so as not to disturb Claire. I scrolled through YouTube Shorts. I've stubbornly refused to download TikTok. And the comedy skits did help put me at ease. That is, until a weird one popped up. The camera was pointed at an open front door, but from an awkward low angle off to the side, as if the person filming was trying not to be obvious. I couldn't see through the doorway from this vantage point. Only a woman with her back turned towards the camera, holding open the door. Suppressed laughter kept causing the image to unfocus and shake. "Jess, why'd you even invite her?" someone unseen whispered. Low voices agreed. I guess there were 3 or 4 girls behind the camera. "Dude, my mom made me. I think she feels sorry for her. I didn't want to. She's a total freak. She's like the girl from The Grudge. Or like a vampire. For real, would it kill her to get some sun once in a while?" One snickered. I assumed the woman at the door was her mother. She was talking to whoever was outside. I turned the volume up, trying to make out what she was saying. "No problem at all. Both of you come right on in." "Oh my freaking god, no way. She brought an imaginary friend?" Fits of poorly muffled giggles all around. "That's so freaking crazy. Even for her." The mother must have heard the laughter, because she turned and shot a quick glare at the group. As she did, a small, pale girl appeared behind her, stepping through the doorway. The group hastily shoved the phone into the couch before she fully entered, video going dark. I thought back to my less than popular school days. Middle schoolers can be absolutely brutal, as I remembered all too well, but after recent events the video just got to me. A kid showing up randomly, acting creepy. It hit a little close to home, and, as silly as it made me feel, the vampire comment admittedly freaked me out. I thought back to Matt standing rigidly right outside the threshold, waiting for me to invite him in. How pale he was. He didn't say Jenny was his mother. I assumed, and he barely agreed. I clicked on the account name. The most recent video had only been posted an hour ago, less than a day after the one I just watched. A girl's tear-streaked face filled the thumbnail. A small smear of something suspiciously rust-colored dotted her t-shirt. I clicked nervously, but the video was stuck buffering. Damn Storm. I thought that 5G crap was supposed to fix all this. "Patrick, you need to get some sleep." Claire's voice was right by my ear. She laughed a little when I jumped. I closed the app quickly. My phone was about to die anyway, so I handed it to Claire, asking her to plug it into the outlet on her side, and she agreed before rolling back over. I shut my eyes, willing myself to sleep. Eventually, I did manage to pass out for about an hour, until my eyes shot open. Something had woken me, but I couldn't immediately pinpoint what. I rolled over to look at Claire, but she was still facing away, sleeping peacefully. Click, Matt. I squinted, trying to find his silhouette in the darkness, but couldn't. I shifted uneasily. Click, Matt. "Is that you?" I whispered. No one answered, but I heard a slight rustling. I thought back to the other night, how he'd laid on the floor. I inched toward the edge of the bed and peered over, my eyes having adjusted to the darkness somewhat. Nothing. My stomach flipped as an unsettling thought popped into my head, and I slowly swung my feet off the bed until I was standing upright. It would be a tight squeeze, yes, but he was small enough. An image of him, teeth bared sharp and limbs contorted tightly, flashed unbidden in my mind. I quietly got down onto my knees, craning my neck to look underneath the bed. I took a deep breath and swept my gaze back and forth, and nothing. Click. The feeling of being watched raised the hairs on my neck. I whipped around, eyes landing on the closet. I saw something move behind the slats. "Matt, is that you?" Click, 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 click. Heart in my throat. I closed the distance and threw open the door. Matt was crouched in the corner of the closet, wide-eyed. He held something tightly behind his back. "Give it to me." I spoke low but forcefully, hoping he couldn't see how much I was shaking. "Now." He dropped a jagged shard of glass on the floor. I thought back to the shocked waiter shattering the cup on the patio. Had he been hiding it this whole time? Why? I hurriedly scooped it up, nearly slicing my thumb open in the process. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" He held my gaze. "Killing monsters." Click. "Go." I pointed towards the door. "Do not come back in here, you hear me? Stay on the couch and don't move. I'll be out in a minute to talk." He slunk past me quietly. I stood vigilantly by the door until I heard the creak of him clambering onto the couch. "I can't do this. I can't. I've got to get him out. Tonight. But where could I take him? I pulled at my hair in desperation. I glanced over at Claire. Still fast asleep, somehow. Call Mum. She'll know. Why haven't I thought to call my own mother? It was well past midnight, but where my mother lived, it wouldn't be much past 10. I padded softly to the side of the bed where Claire was sleeping, careful not to wake her. My phone was charging on the floor next to her. I unplugged it from the outlet and hurried into the hall bathroom, shutting the door behind me. She picked up on the second ring. "Patrick!" She sounded panicked. "I've been trying to call you all night." I frowned, pulling up the call logs. It was empty. "Honey, have you seen the news?" Her anxiety was only heightening my own. "Yeah, a little. But hey, Mom. Something is really wrong, hon. I wish you were here. I don't like the thought of you living alone with everything going on." She paused. "My neighbor. You might remember Betty. She died last night." "Oh my God, Mom. What happened?" I asked. "The police say she killed herself." She sounded dubious. I questioned her. "But you don't think so?" "Well, they found her hanging from the shower rod in the bathroom. You know, one of those actually built into the wall." I glanced uneasily at my own shower. "So why don't you think she did it?" "It certainly looks like she did." "But Patrick, all these cases on the news." She paused. "Betty had a visitor for a few days leading up to her death. She introduced him as her cousin, but she's told me before, both her parents were an only child." "Okay, so maybe second cousin or whatever they're called. Mom, slow down, I need—" "No, just listen for a minute. Our other neighbors, they didn't seem to notice him. I mentioned him to Paul next door, and he said Betty didn't have anyone staying with her. But I had seen both Betty and her cousin at his door earlier that day. It looked like Betty was returning a book she must have borrowed." She took a breath, and then she wasn't reported deceased until her daughter stopped by to check on her. If this cousin was staying there, he must have seen her body. The daughter, Anna's her name, she said there wasn't any signs someone had been staying there at all. She didn't know her mother had any cousins either. And Patrick, there was no car besides Betty's old sedan in her driveway the entire time. How'd he get there? How did he leave? I had seen him just the night before. It just doesn't make sense. "Well, maybe he took an Uber." I trailed off weakly. I didn't even believe that myself, and I knew she wouldn't either. "Mom, make sure you keep your doors locked, okay? Don't let anyone in if you haven't specifically asked them over. Maybe call your friend, what's her name, to stay with you for a while." She agreed, then asked, "Is everything okay? I'm glad you called, of course. But it must be, 1 o'clock over there? What are you doing up?" She paused. "I know things have been tough for you lately with, I worry about you, living so far away." I realized then I didn't have the heart to scare her right now, not when she was already so worked up and couldn't come to see me. "I'm just, returning your calls, seeing if you're all right." Couldn't sleep. After hanging up, I slumped against the tub, heart beating out of my chest. I had been hoping to get some advice, but instead our conversation had only cemented my suspicion, slowly building since that first day, that Matt wasn't just a troubled child. He was something more, something potentially otherworldly, and he was dangerous. I had barely begun wrapping my head around all of this when I heard a yelp and a sharp crack, followed by a thud. "Shit! Claire! How could you leave her alone?" I raced back to the bedroom, flipping the switch to the overhead light. "Oh my God," I breathed. Blood was slowly soaking into the white sheets. Claire was holding her shoulder. "I had to." She looked at me blankly. "He stabbed me, Patrick. I was just trying to get him off me." I saw a pair of small feet peeking out beyond the end of the bed. Slowly, I walked around, revealing Matt sprawled across the floor. His neck was twisted unnaturally to the side. Blood flecked his lips, just like the bird I thought, feverishly, like the crow. He hit the bedpost. I didn't mean to. I turned towards Claire. I stared at her, speechless. I didn't know what to feel. Seeing a dead child is absolutely horrific, of course, and his pale face burned in my mind. But Was he even a child? And for it to be self-defense, honestly, a very, very small part of me felt relieved. It didn't have to be me. It was over. I swallowed the bile creeping up my throat, head pounding. Trying to sound calm, I said, "Claire, we need to get you to a hospital." "No!" she snapped loudly. She lowered her voice. "No, it's not that deep. I'll go wrap it up." I buried my face in my hands as she walked off. I knew I should probably call the cops, but they wouldn't notice the body, would they? They'd throw me in the loony bin like they did all the others. I'd lose my job. I'd lose the house. My life would be ruined even more than it already had. This is insane. This is way too insane. Oh my God, why did all of this have to happen to me? To us? When Claire returned, a bandage plastered neatly around her arm, she helped me strip the bed. We wrapped the body in the sheets and dragged it into the bathroom in silence. The body will be gone in the morning. It will be gone like the others on the news. It was self-defense. He wasn't human. Claire laid down on the bare mattress and closed her eyes. We were both exhausted, but I knew I wouldn't be able to sleep. I left her there and fell onto the sofa. I pulled up the search engine on my phone and typed "mystery visitor murder." I needed answers. The screen loaded pages of results, all from the past month. The first one was a write-up recapping the news report I saw earlier in the day. A thumbnail of a low-resolution YouTube video read, "Kill or be killed," in bold, above a conspiracy nut-looking dude miming holding a gun. I rolled my eyes and scrolled past, finally clicking on a short-form video that caught my eye. A manic-looking face filled my screen. Not everyone can see them. That's how you can test it. The teenager talked rapidly as she filmed herself in a car. "I think, from the research I've done, the people I've talked to, my theory is that only people who have seen someone die or dead can see them, the visitors." She sucked in a deep breath. "I saw my grandfather die when I was 10. I could see my uncle." She threw exaggerated air quotations as she said this. "When I came home from school, Mom said he was visiting. I'd never met him before. When my brother got home later that night, he ignored the guy and just went to his room. I thought he was being an asshole like usual." Her face screwed up, and she paused to wipe a tear running down her cheek. "My mom died that night. I found her in her bed. She had pills stuffed down her throat, the ones she keeps in her bedside table." Another pause for another tear. She wiped it away angrily. "The police say she killed herself, that I invented this uncle as a coping mechanism. My brother thinks I'm mental." She looked straight at the camera, defiant. "But people will see soon. It's all over the news now. People are catching on, and whoever finds the body, well, now they're super..." She stumbled over the words for a minute. "They're susceptible to them too now. It's an invasion. It's spreading. Don't invite them in." The video ended there. I sat silently, considering her chilling words. My mother and I were in a car crash when I was 12. My dad, the driver, didn't make it. What she was saying made sense, at least as much as anything else about this did. My eyelids felt like lead and my head was pounding. The late and interrupted nights were taking its toll, insomnia slowing my thoughts to a dull crawl. Flashes of Matt's dark, lifeless eyes kept worming into my head. Somehow, I must have managed to fall asleep because I woke to the sound of my phone blasting my ringtone in my ear. Unknown number. My stomach churned uneasily as I answered. Birds chirped merrily outside the window. "Hello?" "Hey, Patrick, this is Jen." I sat up, suddenly wide awake. "I'm so sorry I'm just now calling. I left the rehab early. My mother died and I have to deal with her things. She, killed herself." Jenny started crying. "I'm getting myself on track, Pat, I swear. But it's my fault. She's been at the end of her rope with me for a long time now. I didn't tell her I was getting help. I wanted it to be a surprise. And now she's gone, and it's all my fault." She hiccuped wetly. "I'll come by tomorrow to pick up Matt, like I wrote in the letter. He can be a handful. He hasn't been right since he saw his dad die. And I'm so sorry. But I really didn't have anyone else, She kept talking, but the ringing in my ears drowned her out. My mind was struggling to connect the dots. Letter? What letter? Matt isn't real. He doesn't exist. Jenny has a daughter. He... My eyes wandered toward the shut bathroom door. No. Jesus Christ. Patrick, are you still there? Is it okay to come by tomorrow around noon? That's the earliest I can get there. If I could come sooner, I would. I'll have to ask my girlfriend, I croaked out hoarsely. I walked dazedly into the bedroom, shutting the door behind me. Claire wasn't in bed. I heard water running in the bathroom. I didn't know you had a girlfriend. Yeah, we've been dating for a year now. An uncomfortable thought was trying to weasel to the front of my mind. A year? But... What? Pat, we broke up 4 months ago. Are you saying you were cheating on me? Patrick? The phone dropped out of my hand. I was suddenly aware how quiet it was. The water in the bath had been shut off. I held my breath. Patrick, who were you talking to? Claire's voice floated from behind the door, low and cold. Tap, tap. It didn't sound like a knock. It sounded like something sharp against the wood. I shoved Claire's pillow off the bed. The knife was gone. Can I come in? I could hear the predatory grin in her voice, the true wolf in sheep's clothing. I sank onto the mattress, mind racing. Your co-workers have noticed you've been depressed lately, calling out more often. People know it's the anniversary of your dad's death. I imagined her running the knife down my arms, propping me up on a pillow, wrapping my stiffening fingers around the handle. People will be sad, but not surprised. They'll say the signs were there. I started hyperventilating. The waiter, the 2 women at the cafe. They saw me with Matt. They saw me turn to the empty chair next to me, talking aloud to no one. They'll find Matt's body. It won't disappear, because he's real. They'll think you killed him, that you snapped under the pressure. They'll say you couldn't handle the guilt once you came to your senses. Sour bile creeped up my throat. I felt like I was going to throw up. Tap. You'll invite me in. A soft, cruel laugh. I can wait all day. I'll wait all night long. And I believed her. So that's where I am now. I decided to take this time to send a message to my mom, to tell her I love her. I also spent a few hours writing this all down. I know I could have kept it short, and I know most people will think it's bullshit, that I'm just trying to cover my tracks. But I really want you to understand, to put yourself in my shoes and see why things happened the way they did. Also, I took my time writing to delay the inevitable. I'll be calling 911 shortly to let them know they'll find 2 bodies. Because Claire is right. My life is over, one way or another. I will let her in, so, if anyone is reading this and you think you know me, if you're a friend or loved one, I'm sorry. Jenny, I'm so unbelievably sorry. It's an invasion, and it's spreading. Be careful who you invite into your home. Story 3. I'm scared of my girlfriend. At first, I did not know why, but there had always been something off about her. I seemed to be the only one who noticed this, though. First time I noticed it was at a local winter carnival. We were on a ride, enjoying our time together and having fun. She was acting kind of distant, but I just shrugged it off as nothing. At this game where you had to throw a ball at some plates to break them, I won a pretty big teddy bear after breaking 5 of them. I smiled and gave it to her. I said something along the lines of, "For the most amazing girl in the universe," and handed over the enormous stuffed animal. What threw me off at first was that she just took it and said nothing, not even looking at me. It kind of upset me, but I did not want to make it awkward or something by asking about it. The weirdest part, though, was that a few minutes after I had given it to her and we had started walking to the next ride, she looked up at me and said, "Thank you," in this over-enthusiastic voice, and smiled widely at me. The second time was at a family dinner between both our families. Our families were chatting happily back and forth about things like when me and my girlfriend would get married, or when we'd decide to adopt a child, and so on. Almost everyone were laughing and making jokes, including me. I'm not the most sociable type, but if I feel comfortable with the people I'm talking to, I'll be almost as outgoing as an extrovert. But my girlfriend was not laughing or making jokes as she usually would, being the social one in our relationship. She was just staring at the plate and had barely touched the food, even though she had always liked the food I would cook. She had not said a word since the beginning of this dinner, and it was kind of worrying me. I leaned over to my mom and whispered, "Do you think Rose is acting weird?" My mom looked at me like I had just said the most ridiculous thing in the world. "What? No, not at all." After she said that, she turned back and started chatting with the others again. My mom did not even mention what I had said to the others. I could have sworn my girlfriend had looked at me while I had been talking to my mom, but when I turned my head to check if she was still looking, she was happily talking to the others too. Again, I did not think much of it until recently. It's been worse recently. She's been talking less, and I felt like I was being watched almost everywhere. At work, with friends, even while shopping for groceries. Each time I turned around to check, there would be nothing. I've also been waking up with these bruises and small red marks. I just figured that perhaps it was because I was clumsy, and that I had just walked into something throughout the day without noticing. But the more I think about it, the more ridiculous that idea sounds. My hair has not been growing for the past couple of years, which is odd, but I just came to the conclusion that my hair could not grow longer than that. You probably think I'm just paranoid, but I know I'm not paranoid. I knew there was something up. Today, after returning from work, I yelled out her name to check if she was home. No answer. I figured she was out with friends or running some errands. I took off my shoes, threw my keys on the table, and hung my jacket on the coat rack. When I stepped out into the main hall, I could feel a cold breeze that sent shivers up my spine. I quickly checked the house for open windows, but there was nothing. Maybe we had just forgotten to turn on the thermostat or something. It was quite cold outside after all. I checked the entire house again just to be sure, but this time when I walked by the basement door in the back of the house, I could feel the cold air on my feet. It came from the basement. This was weird though, since we rarely went down there. And by rarely, I mean never. The only time I've ever been down there was when we moved into the house and we had some moving boxes we did not want to get rid of. The basement door was always locked, so it shocked me that when I put my hand on the doorknob and turned, the door clicked and opened slightly. Confused, I carefully opened the door completely. It was dark, and I could only see the stairs leading down into the blackness of the basement. I started walking slowly, keeping close to the wall. It felt like I had been walking for quite a while, when I suddenly could feel the cold concrete floor beneath my feet. I fumbled for the light switch on the wall and pressed it when I found it. A single light bulb in the middle of the room lit up, but I still could not see where the cold air was coming from. I stepped away from the wall and walked over to the light bulb. It flickered sometimes, and it had that well-known humming sound that old light bulbs have. When my eyes had gotten a bit used to the dim light, I looked around and could make out some of the shapes that seemed to be boxes, an old closet, a broken chair, and the giant teddy bear I had given to her at the winter carnival a couple of years ago. It kind of surprised me, and maybe also made me a bit sad or disappointed that she had just put it down here to get dusty and eventually break after enough rats had crawled on it or enough insects had chosen it as their home. At this point, I had forgotten why I was even down here in the first place. It was pretty close, so I did not have to walk a lot closer to it to be able to see it. I still hadn't gotten completely used to the lack of light, but I was close enough to touch it, and I could see the silhouette of its head. I reached out to touch it, and I expected it to be dusty and gross, but when my fingers touched the bear's stomach, it was soft, softer than I remember, almost as soft as real hair or fur. I felt around on the bear to check if it was the entire teddy that felt like this. When my fingers got to where the arm was supposed to be attached, I felt something. Something both chunky, sticky, and a bit wet. I looked down at my hands to see red clumps of some dried red stuff that I, in that moment of surprise, could not figure out what was. What the fuck? I quietly said out loud. My eyes had gotten completely used to the bad lighting now, and I looked back at the big teddy bear. I don't know how I did not see this the first time I looked at it. What the fuck? I said even louder than before. A paper with a picture of my face was messily taped onto the face of the poor, stuffed animal with duct tape. Both its arms and legs had been amputated, and a liquid, which I now assume is blood, was smeared over the places where the arms and legs had previously been. Startled, I stepped backwards and tripped on a chair leg that had been laying on the ground. I fell backwards, but was saved by the huge amount of boxes that had been standing there. I stood up again, shaking. I looked back at the now broken boxes with all the contents on the floor. Holy fucking hell! Hundreds or even thousands of pictures of me were laying on the ground. I was in disbelief. It was me doing casual stuff like talking to friends or going grocery shopping. My hands were shaking, and I was fumbling to find my phone. I first checked my front pockets, then back pockets. Thank God it was in the back right pocket. I could feel my adrenaline rushing. I only had so much time to call the police before she came home. I heard our main door creak open and a familiar voice shout, "Emily?" I had to hide. I looked around and saw the closet. "Emily, where are you?" She continued. I opened the closet door and crawled in behind all the old coats and shirts hanging in there. It smells like dust and mothballs in here. "I know you're home." I could hear her heels clicking on the floor. She never took her shoes off when she went inside, even when I asked her to. I'm still sitting in the closet right now. I'm terrified that if I call the police, she'll hear me. I think I've been here for over half an hour. She's been shouting for me to come out, and I can hear all our doors being slammed shut one by one. I think she's looking for me. I forgot to close the basement door before I went down here, so sooner or later she'll know that I know. I just heard the basement door shut. The sound of her heels on the stairs are echoing through our basement. I'm really fucking scared. I don't want to die. She was walking around before, but the sound of her heels just stopped. She knows where I am sure. Story 4. My Girlfriend Isn't Who She Says She Is. Part 1. I leaned above to see if I can catch a glimpse of anything, but it was too dark. Using the flashlight from my phone to illuminate it, observing a square-shaped object inside. Almost immediately I recognized it as an old box. With my curiosity getting the better of me, I started pulling the nearby boards out forcefully. Some of them were stuck firmly and there was no way anyone would find the loose one unless they specifically stepped on it. Eventually I managed to create a gap wide enough to observe the contents of the hole more clearly. It was indeed a shoebox, covered in thick layers of dust. I pulled it out, scraping my hands on the floorboards along the way. I blew the box, making a thick dust cloud appear in the room for an instant until it dispersed. What was this box doing here? Was my girlfriend hiding something from me? Maybe it was an old memento room childhood. The thoughts raced through my head, while almost feverish curiosity had a hold of me. I'm not one to hesitate too much when faced with situations like these, so without spending too much time thinking whether I'll regret opening it or not, I just pulled the lid off and threw it away, seeing with my peripheral vision that another cloud of dust rose from the impact. What I found in the box made my hands tremble and my heart race so fast that I could feel the pulse up to my throat. I'm not even sure how to begin describing it, so here's what I found among the heap of papers inside. The first thing that caught my eye on top was a birth certificate. Ariana's birth certificate. Nothing odd there, I thought, save for the fact that she's keeping it in a dusty old box beneath the floorboards. Then I looked at the next paper. It was a newspaper clipping. I couldn't see the date of the news, but what really horrified me was the news itself. It was an article about a girl who had disappeared, whose full name I will not disclose here. A 26-year-old girl named Ariana, my girlfriend's name. That must be some kind of mistake, I thought. My girlfriend never disappeared. Was it just a girl with the same name as her, so she just decided to keep the clipping because she thought it was a funny coincidence? I read through the article over and over, especially focusing on reading the name of the missing girl until I was sure I didn't read anything incorrectly. When I had had enough, I placed the paper away and looked through the rest of the contents. The next thing I found was an even stranger relic. It was an old ID card. My hands were trembling so hard that I almost dropped it when I looked at it. The name on the card said Jennifer, last name, but that's not what bothered me. What made my heart race even faster was the fact that the woman on the picture was my girlfriend's lookalike. She was more overweight than Ariana, and her hair was dyed red, in contrast to my girlfriend's blonde hair. But her facial features matched that of my girlfriend with uncanny similarity. There was also Jennifer's passport and some other legal documentation, which I didn't read out of panic that my girlfriend could come back any second. I hastily returned the contents back inside the box and into the hole, covering it with floorboards and using the dirty shirt to mop the dust from the floor. As soon as I was done, I bolted out of the apartment and sent my girlfriend a text that I had gone to the gym earlier, due to a meeting I have later. I knew that she would be able to tell that something was wrong if she saw me in that state upon returning, so I had to give myself time to recollect. And here I am, posting this right now, looking over my shoulder every couple of minutes, afraid I'll see my girlfriend standing behind me, demanding an explanation. I want to go to the police, but I'm not sure what to say. For all I know, they could just laugh at me and send me home. But what I do know is that I can't go back into the apartment. I've no idea what I should do. For all I know, they could just laugh at me and send me home. But what I do know is that I can't go back into the apartment, for now. Story 5. My Girlfriend Isn't Who She Says She Is, Part 2. First of all, thank you all for the advice you've given me. I didn't have the time to reply to anyone since the last 24 hours have been crazy, but I kept checking the post religiously in order to get some ideas. I've been contemplating involving the police, but right now I don't have any strong evidence that she did anything wrong. For all I know, she could indeed, like some of you said, be running from a psychopathic ex or abusive father. Come to think of it, she never did introduce me to her father in these 6 months, but I accounted it to her having a bad relationship with him, due to her parents being divorced and him being a heavy drinker. Still though, she never mentioned or even hinted any abuse. At any rate, while I was still at the cafe, I decided that the best course of action would be Googling Jennifer's name to find more info and ultimately confronting my girlfriend about the whole thing, if worse comes to worst. While Googling her name, I was met with some Instagram and Facebook profiles of people with the same name. However, I still opened the links to see if it was the woman from the picture. It wasn't. I thought the search would take hours and that my girlfriend would start calling or texting, but I didn't need to scroll long. A few search results below, I was met with a news article from last year. It was about a Jennifer who had been convicted several times for assault, drug abuse, theft, and ultimately murder attempt. Apparently, Jennifer's ex-husband had enraged her when he refused to give her drug money, so she attacked him with an axe. Luckily, she was apprehended by the police and sentenced to 6 years in prison. Now this is where things get even crazier. Apparently, Jennifer managed to escape prison in September 2017 and has since been at large. The details of her prison break are vague, but the police suspect she fled the country. At the bottom of the article were Jennifer's mugshots. My heart skipped a beat. The red hair, the expressionless face. It was definitely the same person from the ID card. What did all of this mean? I asked myself 1,000 times over and over, trying to connect the dots. I looked at the date of Jennifer's prison break again, June 3rd, 2017. I then went back to Google and searched my girlfriend's name. Again, the first things I saw were websites for Instagram, Facebook, some cooking sites, etc. But below all that was a meager news article. It simply read, "Woman disappears for 2 days, comes back saying she needed some alone time." It was a very short article, and it simply told of a woman with the exact name like my girlfriend's, who disappeared while jogging in the early morning. Apparently after disappearing, Her family and friends could not get in contact with her for more than 24 hours, so they decided to call the police. When she returned unscathed, she simply remarked that she wanted some time to herself, away from technology and people. There were no pictures, but the woman's age at the time of her disappearance was 26, just like Ariana. I looked at the date of the event, October 28th. My heart began racing again as I logged into Facebook with trembling hands. Ariana and I met through some mutual friends during August last year. But when did we start falling in love? We started chatting almost immediately after the initial meetup and were getting more romantic and salacious by late September. We didn't meet again until the next year, but we chatted every day for hours. I couldn't wrap my head around this at all. What was she hiding from me? Maybe she was just embarrassed over the police being involved for her alleged disappearance and never told me because of that. And it seemed a little far-fetched, but maybe that box of Jennifer's documents was there because she found the coincidence funny. Or maybe it was her sister. A million possibilities raced through my head, but I knew I was getting nowhere like this. Plus, it was getting late and my girlfriend would start getting worried soon. I scrolled through some of Ariana's photo albums on Facebook, clicking frantically before deciding it was time to go home. What was the worst thing that could happen? Would she kill me? No, I know her, and she could never do such a thing, even if she was Jennifer. When I arrived home, I carefully opened the door, holding my breath and preparing myself for an imminent attack. "Hi, honey," Ariana's voice came from the living room. "Hi, dear." I tried to sound as calm as possible. "How was your workout?" she asked. "Oh, it was all right. The usual," I replied. "Are you ever going to have a great workout?" Based on her casual way of speaking, I thought she hadn't suspected anything yet. But it was also possible she was giving me a false sense of security. "Probably not," I replied lazily and went into the living room, where she was watching a show on her laptop. She paused her show as I kissed her and sat on the opposite side of the couch, just like I always did. "So, how was your day?" she asked, whilst I pretended to look at my phone, carefully monitoring her in my peripheral vision. "Good. I managed to burn 400 calories on my cardio," I said. "Nice," was her only response. Then an awkward silence hung in the air. She continued, "Hey, listen. I need to talk to you about something." Here it comes, I thought. I lowered my phone and tried to put on my best "where is this coming from" facial expression, bracing myself for her potential confession. Considering the fact that I had prepared coming home to face her with what I learned today, her confession wouldn't come as a surprise. But that didn't stop my adrenaline from pumping, like I just ran a marathon as I awaited her response. "What is it?" I could hear my own voice trembling as I spoke those words. She paused for a moment, then gave me her news. "I went to the doctor's office today, and, I'm pregnant." Her response hit me like a ton of bricks. I felt something rise at the pit of my stomach as I stared in bewilderment, not fully comprehending what I was hearing. "Honey, did you hear me?" She touched my hand, with sympathy in her eyes. I tried deciphering if there were any lies in her words. She appeared to be sincere, but how could I truly tell? "Yeah, I heard you," I mumbled. She gave me an understanding look, then said, "Listen, I know this is a lot to take in. I want us to make this decision together. I know you don't like children, but please think about it thoroughly before making a final decision. Whatever you decide, I won't force you otherwise." I still didn't say anything. Whatever words were on my mind before coming home have dispersed now. "I have a lesson in a few minutes," she continued. "Let's talk after I'm done, yeah?" She took my face into her hands and kissed me, whispering, "I love you," before picking up her phone and leaving the room. I stayed in the same position for what seemed like hours, even though it couldn't have been more than a few minutes. A million thoughts raced through my head, but in the end, I came to only one conclusion. I couldn't kill that child. As far as I'm concerned, my girlfriend's name is Ariana and always has been. In my mind, I never found that box or Googled Jennifer's name. or found the article of my girlfriend disappearing for a day. I never looked at her old photos on Facebook and wondered why her eyes were green, but then suddenly around October changed to dark brown. I'm going to be a father, and the mother is Ariana, not Jennifer.